The thing was that you were. Why are you so concerned that I'm going to make you look dumb?
I don't know. I have a senior moment. So
No.
No. You're not. I would consider you a senior anyway. I think.
Oh, thank you.
Isn't spry a great word to describe someone that's a little bit older, but has like.
It sounds like it's sophisticated.
Sophisticated
I like that.
and like it feels like you're energetic still.
Yeah,
spry.
I like that.
Like you are getting a little bit on in age, but you're ready to. You're still like you're playing tennis.
You know.
Welcome to the Chip Lunch podcast here with Tracy Spry McCall as our guest. It's fantastic to have you along.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here in the Third Space studio.
No worries.
I'm very excited to hear what you have to say. I should also introduce my co-host Ethan. How are you?
Hey all, I'm doing well. How are you, Joel?
Good. You've got your Soul Revival jumper on. Check that out at soulrevival.shop if you haven't got one yet.
Yep.
And a dog hat.
It is a dog hat.
Is that because today where we record so many dogs at church?
Yeah, it's Bring Your Dog to Work Day.
It's great.
It's awesome.
We had a massive talk about dogs.
Yeah,
out
we
there.
just spent ages chatting about dogs.
Yeah, but
Who's
you're
got
a
what?
dog person, aren't you?
Yeah, very much.
I'm
I've
not.
got a cat though too, so
Oh,
I sit on the fence.
Oh, okay, very nice. Well, they're both sitting on the fence, you two animals. Well, I mean, I'm not much of a dog person, but either is Dave, our producer, but because and it didn't really help when one of the dogs, when we were recording a shock absorber earlier, just weed on this what you can see right here, the tablecloth thing that we've rigged up to hide our legs.
Was that him or her saying, "Come on, guys, hurry up,
Speed it up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
Or
been
maybe-
going for a bit long."
You should be taking me outside.
I didn't like what you're saying.
But she did it before. I think it was she did it before the podcast started.
Oh, okay, never mind.
And they were like, "Oh, we'll
I'll
just
take it
leave it till later." And like, "Oh, it stinks." Now we got to.
Wait, did they not clean it up?
Yeah, they cleaned it.
Oh,
up
okay.
Eventually, poor Dave had to go get some paper towel to.
What a king!
Yeah, Dave's a cat man.
Yeah, he is. Anyway,
He's actually a panther, I think. Anyway, let's get to the real meat of the episode. Tracy McCall. We always ask two questions at the start of the podcast, and the first one is, Ethan, please do the honors.
Tracy, how do you prefer your hot chips?
Well, I thought about that one. Hot.
That's a good start.
No, I like them hot with salt, preferably chicken salt and barbecue sauce.
When you said
Best
salt,
smell.
when you said salt, I was a little bit worried for a
Oh,
moment because
okay.
we have a count going.
Oh.
And Joel is in the
Plain salt.
tiny
Oh,
minority.
right. Oh,
The
okay.
tiny minority of people who prefer plain salt.
Yeah, no,
Um,
chicken salt all the way.
That's it.
And barbecue sauce.
That is a very
Barbecue
good
sauce.
decision.
Yeah, there's been a few people that had that combination that they prefer.
It's really nice.
Is it?
Yeah,
Because
it's
I'm
delicious.
not a huge fan of barbecue sauce either.
Wow.
There you go.
Okay.
And it could
That's
be
why we're sitting on this side of the
Yes.
table.
Yeah, I'm like a what is it, like a principality?
Yeah.
Just like the
borders
plain,
here.
Yep.
the plain salt principality. You're like the powerful rulers.
Yeah.
of the chicken salt kingdom. Excellent. Is there a favourite place that you like to get these chips from? Is there a place you always go back to?
No, not really. Well, probably Grace Point because it's convenient.
The local.
Yes.
The local.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
used
where
to be K&M at Guyamere.
Oh, there's a few people have mentioned that before too,
yeah.
and then but that changed hands apparently. So
we
Changed hands and
haven't
changed
been
oil.
back.
Changed hands and changed the oil.
Yeah, no, it's all about the oil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no.
Okay. That's
So pretty much Grace Point these days.
okay.
Yeah.
Ever loaded up on a sandwich or anything, or it's just you just
Don't
like
mind
a chip sandwich,
they've got what do they call this? Called
a chip buddy.
yeah, a
chip
chip
buddy?
buddy. That's
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. No, don't mind the old chip buddy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the first time hearing that terminology.
Oh, really?
That makes
and
you
you've
feel.
got English grandparents.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I
Wow.
think it's
Yeah.
You should go and
probably
ask.
from there.
That's
Okay,
where.
there
That's
you
I
go.
believe that's where it's
Yeah.
from.
There you go.
Anyway, the next question, Tracy, is that we would love to hear. How did you become a Christian?
Well, it was a bit of a process. I'm not from a Christian family, and I was asked along by a friend when I went to high school, first year, year 7, to come along to a youth group. And so it was really a bit of a process over a couple of years, and I think I probably asked Jesus in my heart first time probably 12 and a half and several other times after that just to make sure God heard. So, yes, I think it was just a process of understanding what I was believing in. Yeah,
Right.
so I was baptised when I was 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did you get invited to? Like, what church did your friend invite you to, or what youth group at what church?
Yeah, it was at Grace Point Baptist.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had no affiliation with that whatsoever. So occasionally, and with that I mean you could count on one hand, I would have gone to Sunday school in my young years at Grace Point Anglican, but my parents weren't Christians, so it was not a priority.
Was that a thing at home? Were they properly against Christianity? Oh, they
Yeah.
were. Do you know why that was?
I don't know. Mum still is really to this day, and I remember her saying even as a teenager, she used to say, "Oh, it's just a phase you're going through." So,
Yeah, I also got that comment
Yeah,
when I was going to youth group.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It's
I don't know
just
if I
a
got it. I
phase.
think that's how what my parents thought. Oh, he's just going through a phase.
Yeah, just see it out. It's been an awful long phase.
That's right. Jesus is pretty strong
Yeah,
when he gets a
yeah.
hold of you. So then, and you grow up in the Grace Point area as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was that a nice time to grow up in a leafy suburb of Grace Point?
It was. Different probably to how it is today. Not that it's less nice, just different. But yeah, we had I think it was still very, very community based back then. So it was a nice time to look back on. And as far as church youth group, it was. I have wonderful memories. We were very,
that's
very
nice.
lucky to have that. It was a small church and a very nurturing church. So, yeah.
Do you have what's the enduring memory of being part of that time in youth?
I think they were very supportive of the youth, and it's pretty much that's probably why I gelled with Gymea Anglican and Soli's, how they really supported their youth, because it was like that in a very much smaller way. And for instance, I was teaching Sunday school. Why they allow me to teach Sunday school at 15 when I barely knew the gospel myself, but they did. And myself and my friend Megan, we were both Sunday school teachers, and we both had our own room. And I painted. They paid for us to paint our rooms. 15, 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
She painted hers yellow. I painted mine green. And when I mean green, I mean green.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
like real bright?
Yeah, really super bright. Yeah. And I painted everything, the chairs, the cupboards.
Awesome.
It was just, and they were okay with it. You know, they were just really supportive. There's two young teenagers. I think we might have been 16 then. And yeah, that's how they supported us yeah. But yeah, no, it was really fond memories, camps and things like that.
When you said you became a Christian when you were 12 and then got baptized at 14, around that time, like, given you'd made the decision to be a Christian and accepted Jesus, what changed for you, do you think, that wasn't there before becoming a Christian?
I think I always believed in a God. I don't think really even at 12 I fully understood the impact of Jesus, but what I did see was the love of the people. So I think that's what really kept me there. And in hindsight, I can see that's just the way that God used the group of people and how he helped me to stay there until I was ready for the understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And why was it so important? I mean, you said that you felt really valued when you were teaching Sunday school and they allowed you to paint the rooms and all that kind of thing. Was that something, do you think, that was important to you prior to be giving that role, or that's when you realised, oh, these people are making me feel valued? Because a reason I recall it, because you spent so much time working in children's ministry, for example, that I'm just wondering, is that start before you was leading Sunday school, or did it happen during and after teaching Sunday school?
I think it just all happened together. I think what I've learnt as I've grown older is that God can use anything, and I'm not particularly bright or anything, but I'm crafty. But God will use what you have, and for His purpose, and that's pretty much what I think. I think that's how the particular leaders of the church at the time, that was their view, and I think that's how they encouraged us. And so I don't think it was sort of, I'm going to have a life in children's ministry or in children's work. I think it just happened that way, and it was just all came together.
Yeah. When you say you're crafty, does that mean like cunning, or does that mean you like doing craft?
That too. No, more the hands-on.
Yeah.
I have a distinct memory from I think it was a Christmas production. I think it was Happy Feet. For some reason, I was dressed up as a penguin. And I had the full penguin outfit.
I need photos.
And if they were there, they would be amazing. And I had these diver flippers that had been painted, but I just have this distinct memory of being like, Tracy, you're amazing. Like, you're amazing, but I'm in so much pain.
Having to wear these flippers.
It was so good.
Suffer for
fashion. It was this acknowledgement of how good it all looked, but also, ow, this hurts so much.
A really good case of fashion over function.
That's it.
No, that's really cool.
I do remember a time when it was a little church, and they just didn't have a lot of money, and at one stage they had the book to teach out of, but it was a stretch for them to get the activity books at the time. Right. And I just said, well, don't worry, because I don't use them. Just don't buy them. And they're saying, what? No, I'll do my own thing. It's okay. And I think that's pretty much how things grew within my craftiness out of a necessity and a helping hand for them, but also something that I really like to do.
So you're crafty about your craft.
I'm crafty about my craft. Yeah.
I like that. So let's returning back to your personal story though, which I'm sure there's going to be plenty of examples of crafty stories throughout the years. So from about you're leading a Sunday school, which is really, really, really lovely.
I was just teaching a class.
Teaching a class, but you're a leader in some respects. What happened after that? So you're in the middle of high school. What was high school like for you? And was it difficult being a Christian, or was it kind of accepted? We talked to some people that there's like, you're kind of on the outer, and some people say, people just knew I was a Christian and that was it. What was it like for you?
We were kind of, it was an interesting mix because there was a few of us. We didn't overly let it out that we were Christian. So we were kind of, and we didn't, because we were still growing, we didn't sort of know that we should really stand up. Maybe we did, we just didn't want to. I don't know, can't remember back then, it's a long time ago.
only about 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But I was not a scholar, and my favourite time was lunchtime and recess. And so I remember we had good friendships, but I didn't love school, so I couldn't wait to get out really. So but we did have a group, and we probably supported one another. So for those we did share, they probably knew that we were part of a youth group, and there was probably more accepted back then that you could go to a youth group and it didn't have any stigma or anything. Certainly at Kirrawee. I went to Kirrawee High.
You went to Kirrawee High, okay. As did Ethan.
I did.
So,
Yep.
Just before we go too far into high school and beyond, I did just have a question back on when you first became a Christian.
Yeah.
You said you always believed that there was a God, but what was it that kind of ticked over for you that you were like, I actually should become a Christian? And you said it happened a few times.
Yeah. I think it was, one, I understood. I felt I understood that you needed to be saved. That I certainly have always understood that you're not guaranteed. I've had a life, my younger life, I had a lot of tragedy. And so I understood that no one, being Christian or not Christian, are guaranteed of life going well for you, and nor are you owed it. So I certainly never felt like God owed me anything, but I certainly believed that there was a God, and I couldn't imagine that there wasn't an afterlife. It just didn't make sense to me. So once I started looking more into what I actually believed and understood who Jesus was and what he did, it made a lot more sense. I think for me, I had to get past, the 2 ways to live sort of thing. I don't know if people know that, there's Jesus on the cross and you walk across and the man died for you and, then you become saved. Because I was from a non-Christian background, that made no sense to me. So I needed to come with more of a Christian view that there is a being, there is someone who loves you, who's created this and loves so much that he wanted to send a representation of himself to the world, and that's how he was going to make the connection. Once I understood that, it became a lot clearer. Then I understood, okay, this is who Jesus is. This is God. This is who came to earth, and God has done this so I could be friends with him. So, so I think it was just because my mum was, still is an atheist, as my grandmother was, we're talking 3 generations of non-Christian here, so it sort of took a little bit of time. That's what I mean, to understand what I actually was believing in. I could see the picture, I could see everyone else, I could see the outpouring of the Spirit on these people, but I didn't fully understand it until I was a little bit older, maybe even after to when I was baptised. I thought I knew it, at all then, but it takes time to see it, to see the full. Still, even now, I'm still learning. So,
That
Sorry, I'm just going to shuffle this.
Yep.
I was just saying we need to hear what you have to say.
Oh.
Because I was just about to say that please don't ever suggest that you're not a scholar, because that was just so beautifully articulated. It was lovely.
Well, that was just my personal experience. So
no, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you feel willing to share, like, what was the tragedy and the background around your family that made you realise that there's got to be something more?
Yeah, my father died when I was 7.
Right.
And within a 5-month period, my grandfather, my mother's father, passed away of a heart attack. And in between that, my auntie, my father's only sibling, died in a car accident.
Wow.
So that was all around a 5-month period when I was 7. And on top of that, my 2 cousins, they had that disease where they had no resistance. And my eldest cousin, he's my second cousin, but we were close at the time. He was fine, but his 2 siblings died.
Wow.
So it was all kind of really close. And so the idea that you are born and then there's nothing just never really made sense to me. So, it's funny, even as when you're little, you close your eyes, you think, I'm here. I am here.
I exist.
I exist.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. I know my real father's grandmother, so my great-grandmother, she was a Christian. But she died when I was about 3. So I often wonder, maybe she prayed for me. I don't know. So, who knows? But,
Well, I'm sorry to hear about that. And
life goes on. And
but there's certainly...
Mum remarried and had my younger sister. I mean, there's 4 of us, but if she didn't remarry, she wouldn't have had Kerry, and I'm really close to Kerry. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a lot of noise that the dogs are making in the other room, so I apologise for that if anyone's listening or watching. Thank you for being willing to share such deeply personal things. It's just, it makes a lot of sense now that you say that was your reaction to when you started to understand the gospel.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing that back, Ethan. That was a good question to come back to, because we just got that absolute gem of detail.
Oh.
What we were kind of getting towards the end of high school. What did you want to do once high school finished? And you had any
no
plan?
idea.
Yeah, like most
idea.
teenagers.
Yeah. No, I really didn't. And I dabbled with the idea of working with children, but I understand things not working out, so I left school and worked in a shop, but I always continued doing kids ministry, and so it's interesting. God blessed me further down the track with getting the job in before and after school care sometime later. So it's basically my ministry, working with children, helped me get a job, and then my job helped me get into ministry. And so it kind of all, God just works it all out, really. Yeah.
Did you say you left school early? Prior to the end of year 12?
Yeah.
Okay. And
it wasn't a thing back then to...
There was more done back then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That you wouldn't go...
Especially if you had nothing in particular you wanted to do, and I certainly didn't know what I wanted to do. So
it's changed a lot these days. It's kind of like
absolutely.
You go to year 12 and finish it. You were only really going to year 12 if you were going to university at that time?
At that time, I think possibly. So when I went through school at Kirrawee, there was 7 classes in my year.
Mm-hmm.
So out of that, I think there was only about, say, 2 or 3 worth of classes that went on.
It continued.
Of children, kids, teenagers. Yeah.
That was from year 11 onwards? Like, did you finish in year 10?
I finished year 10.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And
hindsight, I would have liked to have gone on, but it certainly wasn't mine.
why was that?
I think I would have liked to have become a teacher or something, but life doesn't always give you what you want. You just
So you went and worked in a shop?
Yeah, I've worked in a chemist for a couple of years, and even dabbled, did a bit of modelling.
Did you really? Tell us about that. Come on. That's fantastic.
A friend of mine, she used to make clothes, so that's how it started.
Yep.
She was actually the minister's niece, and she was a dressmaker, so she used to have all of these fashion parades, so I used to go and model the clothes, and then I did a bit of work at Grace Brothers, which was Maya. Maya was Grace Brothers back then, so they used to have a few fashion parades. I used to do it for that. So
wow,
my early 20s.
Have you got any photos? We've got to put this up on the podcast. If you've got any photos,
I've got a couple. Oh, not from me on the catwalk, but I've got my my portfolio stuck somewhere.
Yes, please find that. That would be amazing.
We need you to snap us a pic and put it up on the podcast.
Honestly, that would be the best.
That would be so cool. What was that like? What was it like modelling? Did you like doing it?
I didn't mind it, but at the end of the day, it was pretty sleazy. So,
right.
It was always, can you,
do this.
Do you want to do bikinis? No.
Yeah, okay.
No, I kind of felt I was always needing to, then I'd have someone say, look, let's do body shots. Well, body shots are,
take your clothes off.
Take your gear off. It's like, no.
Okay.
I don't think so.
It's just a little bit like, let's do body shots. I'm like, no thanks. Okay. So working and then modelling, and then did the modelling game obviously wasn't not your cup of tea.
Definitely wasn't. And then I started, I saw an ad, and at the time because I had been previously married, I think most people know that, or we're the notorious blended family.
It's not notorious.
Well, we've made it work. So.
Yeah.
And I had 2 kids, that was Kale and Quinn, and I needed a serious job. And I saw this one ad in a newspaper that, might I add, I never read, of this little job saying I wanted an assistant at before and after school care. And I rang up. So I attended with a piece of paper, a reference from my minister. That's all I took. I had nothing else. I was the last applicant. Got the job.
Nice.
3 months later, I was the coordinator.
Awesome.
Rising up the ranks.
That's it.
Yeah. So modelling, it was just, you know, you need to be available, and you know, my priorities shifted from by that stage anyway. So yeah.
Can I ask how old were you when you first got married?
20.
20. And then
and I didn't have to get married. I wasn't pregnant.
Sorry, I wasn't suggesting
That's
that.
usually what people think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not very pleasant. I wasn't suggesting that. Sorry.
I know I don't. I know you won't.
And then so I think you said that like Quinn, who's been on the podcast before, you had her and her brother Kale.
Yeah.
And then how old were you when that marriage ended?
26.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And then like you've got 2 kids to look after. You're like, we need to make this make this work.
Make this work.
Fantastic. So then God provided and
Yep.
And how
I married Graham at 29.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was 29 or nearly 30. I think I was nearly 30.
And then, as you said, you've had a few more kids since then, which is the blended family comment, which explains that. I was just wondering in between that, and I'm not going to ask you to go into too many details because it's obviously a difficult time. Being a Christian during the time of having those kind of things happen within your marriage, how did that help you, and how did it support you, and was it a real thing that you could fall back on when it was probably a really difficult time for you?
It was a really difficult time. I think the sense of failure you can't express, and there's some sin that you can hide, but going through a divorce, you feel like you're going around with a head piece on saying divorced person, and
like branded kind of thing.
Branded, and it was a really, really hard time, but it was also a time that you're at your rock bottom, and it's kind of when you really know that that there is God, and the grace that He showed me, because it was through that. That's what I mean that's when I got that job, because I had no prospects. I worked in a shop. That was my was my experience. Yeah.
And modelling didn't
have
a lot left.
And modelling to fall back on.
Yeah.
So basically God gifted me with this job, and it was through the experience of me working with children. Yeah. So it was just sort of like a blessing, even though I felt like I'd really failed God. And so that amount of grace that God showed me, it's just, it's amazing. Yeah.
I think also though, when you say that you've failed God, speaks to your feeling that I don't know how to describe it, but it's also like the fact that you didn't want to fail God is really a really important thing. And I'm sure at that time, I can't speak for you in that position, but to feel that way and feel like you had failed God and feel like everyone's branded you a particular thing and stuff, to know that you can, I find it an encouragement to know that you felt like you failed, but like we've talked about people before on Chip Lunches, that a lot of people talk about their rock bottom.
Yeah,
fully.
And that the rock at the bottom is Jesus.
Yeah.
And
exactly
he's the one that helps you to at least maybe not rise all the way back up, but he's there at your very worst moments.
Yeah, he certainly is. Yeah. And you can't express that, and you can't put that into words to how that feels, to know that God is there at your worst moment. So, yeah.
It's just lovely. Thank you.
It's beautiful.
And again, thank you for being willing to share that. You're going to say something? Sorry.
No, I was just adding that it's really beautiful and it's really encouraging. And I was just going to say that. Just thanks for being cool to share that. And it's really cool.
You said a lot of things that meant the same thing then. It's okay. Sorry, I put you on the spot. Sorry.
I hope it wasn't too deep and boring.
To be honest, like I sometimes get told to not go too deep on Chip Lunch, but I love it because I just love hearing people's stories and hearing how they manage to overcome them.
Yeah.
So then, as you said that you're working at. Can you remind me where you were working?
Okay.
Where you got that job? That was Grace Point.
Yeah, before and after school care.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, I worked there for 8 years, and by that time I married Graham. We had Zach and Tyson. So by now we've got 5 kids together because he had a daughter as well.
Okay.
And from there, I then started going to Guymer Anglican, or we all started going to Guymer Anglican, and voila, I ended up being the children's minister.
That's all right. Did you meet Graham at Grace Point Baptist where you were? Okay,
yeah,
right. And
yeah,
then what was the reasoning behind changing churches? Like you got married there first and then planned and then chose to do that?
Yeah. No, we kind of wanted a fresh start.
Yeah.
There was also nothing there youth-wise for the kids.
For the young'uns.
Yeah, right.
So we actually went there. We'd not been to an Anglican church, so we thought, we'll just be passing through here, and we ended up staying. So.
What time was that? Do you remember like what year that was?
That we started at Guymer Anglican, exactly, because it was the year that I had Tyson, so it was 1993.
Oh, a big year.
Yeah.
Big year.
Beginning January 1993.
Right.
So, yeah.
And how quickly did you become working in children's ministry after
didn't
that?
happen straight away.
that
It
was-
was years later. So,
Okay.
no, I can't remember what year it was. It would have been maybe 2002, 2003,
Wow.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
I was involved in both the kids' church and the preschool, the playgroup at first, and
Yep.
and scripture.
Yep.
So
Obviously, because you had quite a few kids to take, you could take to those the
Yes.
playgroup and things like that. So that makes a lot of sense. What I think that your experience is reasonably unique, and you talked about being a blended family. What I'd really like to ask you, like you've moved churches and you've gone through a lot. I'd just be really interested to know what you could share from that time, like being a mum. Obviously, marrying again, is it like you got a new husband? So there's a new thing that you've gone through a lot of change. Like I speak like, I mean, like I've only been in one relationship with one person. I've married them, and then I'm having kids with them.
keep it that way.
Yeah, that's right. But I don't think that minimizes your experience.
Yeah.
And I think that like getting married and having children are a big enough change in your life. But I think you've done more than that. And I would really like to know what your reaction to that is, and how we've also talked about how Jesus has brought you through that. But I also want to learn from your experience. So I'd really interested in what you think you've learned through that time.
I think it has taught me that to hang in there, that God is with you no matter where you are in your life, and even when you are at your worst, God is there. I've been through difficult times. I've failed miserably at some things, but God is still there. And to hold on to that. There's experiences that I look back on and I thought that sometimes I'm ashamed of and think, how could I have done that, or why wasn't I there? Why didn't I do this or whatever? But I've learned that God, if you give your best, that's all God's expecting. You can't look back with regret all the time, and because that can be just as sinful and useless as anything.
And not helpful to
Always you'll have your consequences. We've had to go through consequences that you will never experience. But that is the consequences of being a part of a blended family. We've also seen a lot of blessing. And for that I'm eternally grateful to God. So there's a verse in the Bible, and I'm hopeless at repeating it word for word, but it's don't hold on to things that will rust and perish. But where your heart is, your treasure is also. And I think sometimes when we get a bit off track and we're treasuring something too much, we know that our heart isn't with God. Because sometimes we sort of breeze over that and think that verse isn't what it is.
Yeah.
So
it's a pretty intense verse, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. So when I find I'm getting sort of off the track, which I'm prone to do, I like to bring myself back and remind myself, okay, I'm spending too much time, and it can be anything. It can be with your family. It can be with worrying about your work too much, worrying about, because I'm sure I spend too much time concentrating on one thing, and I like to bring myself back with that verse. So
is that the treasures in heaven verse? Is that right?
Yeah.
From Matthew 6, I think? It
Yeah.
says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also."
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you're saying you use that verse to come back
I
to...
use that verse to come back.
To continually come
back to God.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get stuck in things that you think are important and they're not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
My only thought then is there was something that made you go into full-time ministry, children's ministry. What was that?
I don't know. Look, it was 10 years of a most wonderful blessing, but also the hardest time in my life.
Really?
It's
Because
where
you've had some hard times before. I was just going to say.
And ministry is so subjective, and it's really hard to know whether you're doing good or whether you're not doing so good. And in the end, all you've got is being faithful. That's all you've got.
Yeah.
So
And allowing God to do the work, really.
yeah.
And craft.
And craft.
And craft.
And
Yeah, that's craft. You got the craft.
Yeah.
And it's where I got to know Ethan's dad. So so that was a bit of a whirlwind because we came from polar opposites. I'm sure Stu might, maybe you will.
Oh no, he won't mind at all.
No, let
Yeah. Oh, he'll say this too.
We'll trash him. That's all right. We'll trash him on
We
this
came
pod.
from polar opposites because Stuart is big picture, eternal optimist,
Yep.
Yeah.
and I am. Let's figure this out.
Yep.
And
How can we make craft work for this?
yes, and okay, I can see all the problems here.
Yep.
And it wasn't a magical relationship at first, to say the least. But when the Bible says bear with one another in love, that's what it means. Bear with one another. And in the end, we kind of put our differences aside. We were able to work together. And I think at that time in Guyme Anglican history, children's ministry worked completely separate from youth ministry, and
It's like siloed.
so we learnt to work together to make that more of a cohesive way to exist. And so I think a lot of blessing came out of it. So we can joke about it now, Stu and I. We've got like a brother-sister relationship.
Yeah.
I think he used to think I was 100 years older than him because I keep reminding him, 6 years older than you. That's it.
It's the only difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you got any memories of that time, Meath?
Oh, heaps. But I find it hilarious. My brother and I are 6 years difference, and that's all that is, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is a sibling relationship. I lost my train of thought because I got distracted. Oh no, I think it's really fun. I, as someone who is a bit similar to my dad in that I am the big picture, like look at all that stuff, go high energy, do all that,
super positive. Yeah.
I actually find it really helpful when I have someone who clashes with me, but
Reins you back in a bit.
like pulls me back in, and just it actually makes for a really good team. And that's what you and like from my memory and from anecdotal stuff, you guys were a really good team. And I think there are a lot of churches and a lot of stories where children's ministry and youth ministry have always clashed. And I think it's really beautiful and really cool that despite your differences, you were able to make them work
How hard
together.
you worked on that.
That's right.
Yeah, and like to the point where we had a meeting recently as a youth team, and we did our youth programming meeting, and we had a whole bunch of the people from the kids team there. Because we were working with them to, and that's because of Dad's relationship with you. He's gone, oh, it's really important Like all of these things are really
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
And Soul Revival Church comes along and Stu goes like, we got to. I think was Tim employed before me? Like, I don't know, maybe he wasn't.
Yeah. I fought for Tim.
Like, yeah.
I fought for Tim and I won.
But that's because he worked with you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Tim was great. He was going to be a great children's minister, youth minister, whatever. So so.
But yeah, I think it's really cool that what your work at Guy Meir and your relationship at Guy Meir with Dad has created has meant that now we do ministry in such a certain way.
Yeah.
Like, it's really cool.
Yeah,
the impact of that.
Great.
Can you tell us, like, you've worked in children's ministry for such a long time now. What's your philosophy on it? Like, how do you see it? Tell us why it's so important. Because I agree with you, but I think you can articulate it better than me.
Well, I don't know if I can articulate. Because children are people. So, and probably from my experience of not knowing Jesus as a young child, it is so important that they experience who Jesus is from a young child so they can make that decision. And yes, it is a growing one, but they can be a Christian as a young child. And yes, sure, it develops and they understand more. But yeah, it's not like, oh, you have to wait till you're such and such an age to then, okay, now I'm going to become a Christian. Yeah. They're a Christian as soon as they can, understand who Jesus is and say, yes, I love Jesus. So
I'm trying to find that verse that Jesus talks about, that we need to have faith like children.
Yeah.
But I can't find it at the moment. Sorry, I forget where it is. I forget what gospel it's in. But I think as someone that my mum has worked in early childhood all her life, and it's the same thing, and I completely agree with you. I think there's something really special, and this comes from what Ethan was talking about before, about the way that you have taught Stu and our other leaders to value children just as much. Any ministry that we do in church is that children's ministry is just as important as any other ministry, is that I see that playing out in my children's lives. So the fact that how disappointed they are when they're not able to come to church is for that very reason, is that we have put an emphasis on that, and that obviously that our teaching has to be age appropriate, and there are different ways, and craft plays a very very important part in that. But I think it does actually. You've got some great ideas to be able to transfer that learning and to be able to help them to understand that. But I think also just the fact that for my children and everyone else's at church and many other churches, the difference that it can make in their lives, and I think that's what you're speaking about as well, just to know that they are loved and valued. That's something that you experience.
That's right. Yeah. And sometimes it's the relationship, or I think always it's the relationship, especially when they're younger, because we did a little example of who can remember what they were taught when they were 4 or 5. Yep. People don't always remember that, but they remember the relationship. And so it's that kind of the twofold. It's the teaching, of course, but it's also that relationship as they grow. And I think that's so important.
Tim was telling me a story on a previous Shockers Orbit episode. Tim, our children's pastor, as we've mentioned, he's been on Chip Lunch as well, and he was talking about how one of the children who went to a Sunday morning Kirrawee gathering had gone to school and said, "Oh, my friend's having a baby," and the teachers and the principal were a bit concerned, because they're like, "This child's rather young, so if their friend is pregnant, there's a bit of a problem." But what the child was saying is that, "Oh, it's my older." Like someone within the congregation who is having a baby, and because they've spent time in kids' chill developing that relationship that you're talking about, is that they consider them a friend. And I think that's what's lovely about children's ministry and really, really important. Yeah. Did you have that?
I got the verse. Luke 18. People were also bringing babies to Jesus for him to place his hands on them, and when the disciples saw this, they rebuked them. But Jesus called the children to him and said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly I tell you, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it." Which has got many other meanings that there's lots of cool little details in that. That's but at its base value,
Yeah.
it is that.
It
like
is.
it is as someone who became a Christian as a young child,
Yeah.
and grew up in the church and had people like you, Tracy. Like you were one of my Sunday school teachers, and it was really cool to have that as have friends older than me.
Yeah.
I remember some songs. I remember some key stories, but mostly it's it's those relationships that I had with my Sunday school teachers and my leaders, and we have this really funny phenomena that happens at youth group, and it's not necessarily exactly the same, but when they rock up in year 7, there's this hilarious thing of like, oh, they don't want to like sit in discussion groups and be friends with us and like do that. No, that's really sad. And it's like, no, they're just year 7 boys and girls. Like they just want to run and be crazy and be silly. And you actually watch them as you be friends with them. By the time they're in year 10, which is our youth group is year 7 to 10. By the time you're in year 10, you're actually sitting with them and having real conversations with them. And like you can do that prior to year 10.
Yeah.
But it's the relationship
It is.
that builds over years of maturity from whether it be from year 7 to 10 or even earlier than that. And it is those relationships that are really, really important.
And when that relationship is based on the love of Jesus, then like that's where the real impact can come from.
Yeah.
And can really set some children, set some children up really well for them, just within themselves for life, and hopefully for their faith as well. And I mean, God's in control of that, but I think that, I was just really thankful for the way that we see at church children's ministries being highly important, and I think it makes a big difference. I was going to ask you though, Tracy, were you doing full-time ministry, like children's ministry at Gymea? Like, how old were your children then? Because that's going to be... That's a lot on your plate.
I was working 4 days. I was offered to go full time, but I didn't want to go full time. I wanted someone else to help, so that was kind of really good. So that's where Tim came along, and obviously we know that Tim's great. He's brilliant. So I'm just trying to think. So it would have been 2002.
2002
so
you started.
Would have been. Someone will have to do the math. Ty was born in 96. So did I say 96 or 93 before?
I think you said
93 before.
Oh, sorry, I made a mistake.
Oh, we made him older. That's good.
Yeah. It's 96.
96. So in 2002.
I was going to say, because I'm 98 and I didn't think Tyson was that many years older than me.
Yes, that's just a senior moment.
That's okay.
So...
Spry moment.
Yes,
Spry moment.
That's it.
So he would have been, 4, 5, probably about 6 when I started.
Yep. So then you've got a 9-year-old.
Yeah, 9-year-old. And then Kale and Quinn would have been in the early teens.
Yep.
So I think, and then Jade would have been, I think Kale is 10 years older than Zach.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have been 19, so work back from there, 19, 18, 16.
Yep.
19, 17, 16.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
Solid. Amazing.
There's a lot going on then. Yeah. Can I ask you about a rule that Quinn brought up on Chip Lunch that you had?
A rule
that you
had. Yeah.
Was that your children had to go to church until they were 16, and if they didn't want to come after that, they could stop coming.
Absolutely. And probably, I hope Zach and Ty didn't hear that, because I actually upped it to 18. No, I feel quite strongly about that, because, hey, I'm not from an academic background, but I went to school, and school education is important. So how much more is spiritual education? So I don't go with, so I hope I'm not upsetting anybody, but...
This is your choice.
This is my choice. I don't hold with, no, if you don't want to go to church, you don't have to. I think you do. Because how often as an adult, sometimes, do I really feel like going to church? Oh, no, I don't really feel like... But, I've kind of learned over my time, it's important to go, because sometimes it's on those moments that God tells you something that you really weren't expecting. So I just sort of feel that spiritual education for kids is really super important. And however they get it, it's really important, I feel. So, yes, that was the rule.
Lovely. That's
Yeah,
great.
So it was
I
16.
think that's basically what Quinn said too, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is
That's
many
what Quinn
months
said.
ago, but
Yeah.
got to think about what I'll do with my kids.
Yeah, because it is hard, so it's just easy to make it a rule.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it. I haven't got the right clothes. I've got nothing on.
Yeah, Ethan, before I ask my final question,
Yes.
which I'm going to surprise you with.
Oh no, hope
It's not a bad one.
Are you surprising me with it, or is it the same final question?
Same final question.
cool.
You'll know what it is.
Yeah, I was
but
like,
Tracy doesn't. I forgot to
Oh,
line you up
Debrief.
before I do. Do you have any other questions for Tracy before I ask the final question?
no, I think I'm very excited for the final question,
Okay.
actually. Yeah.
So the final question that we ask everyone towards the end of the podcast, Tracy, is when you look back over your life, and I know we've skipped a few areas, so I think this answer will encompass some of them. But when you look back over your life, what do you wish you knew as a Christian at any point in your life back then? What do you wish that you knew that you know now?
Just how important prayer is.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I'm not a super prayer or anything, and quite often for me, if I have a problem presented to me, I usually go to everything, all other avenues before I hit prayer. But God answers one way or another, and when you sort of really, I've seen so many amazing things happen with prayer. I don't know why I still can't make that happen for me the first instance rather than the third, fourth or fifth instance down the track. But and just how gracious God is too. Yeah, no matter what.
And so when you fall back on prayer, do you feel like it's like, oh, I should have done this a while ago?
Yes.
Because I do that too.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Always.
Why was I
always.
just thinking about myself
Yeah,
the whole time?
why did I think I could solve it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I've been, because I think we were going through Market Church,
Mm-hmm.
I've been going through John, and I've just sort of been going through the, part of the gospel where I'm just up to the point where Jesus has just died on the cross, as I just do a little bit each day, and because I know the story so well, as we all do. It's just little instances that you sort of pick out and you sort of think, oh, I wonder what that. So the part that I'm talking about at the moment is that the soldier that stabbed Jesus in the side.
Yep.
And you sort of think, I wonder if he was really doing that out of. I mean, he could have just gone and broken the legs of Jesus like the other two men. But for whatever reason, it was out of brutality, or he couldn't be bothered, or whatever reason he did it. He did it, and it's just amazed me that God is in control, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian. That had to happen to fulfill Scripture, but it was that soldier. He was just an ordinary soldier doing whatever he was doing, but he fulfilled Scripture, and he doesn't even know that. But God was in control.
Yeah.
So it's that aspect of God that I look back and think that is amazing. God is in control over Christians, non-Christians, over all of his creation.
It's really powerful.
Yeah, and a really good way to finish.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Yeah,
It's all right.
100%. It was awesome.
It's okay.
No, it
It was
was
so good.
no, just
So good.
this is why we do this podcast,
Fully.
is to hear people's stories,
Yep.
and for ourselves, firstly,
Yeah.
but to everyone that listens or watches, to be encouraged by them. And
Yeah.
I have been massively encouraged by you
That's
today.
all right. It's great.
And thank you for your honesty, and thank you for sharing your experiences, which some of them are quite difficult to share. So, but and that's what I take from exactly what you said. Is that God is in control. And I'm really, really thankful for having you on the pod. So thank you.
Fantastic.
We always
Thank
like
you
to
very
finish with a one way. Would you like to finish with a one way?
One way.
One way.
One way.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tracy.